The cold darkness of space near Neptune's orbit was broken by the soft blue glow of the USS Liberty's engines. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his small patrol ship, watching the ice giant slowly rotate through the main viewing screen. His crew of 12 had been on routine survey duty for 3 months, mapping asteroid fields and checking for any unusual activity in the outer solar system. "Sir, we're picking up something strange on long-range sensors," called out Communications Officer Lisa Brown from her station. Her voice carried a note of confusion that made Morrison turn away from the window. "What kind of strange?" Morrison asked, walking over to look at her display. Lisa frowned at the readings. "Multiple contacts, sir. Really big ones. They just appeared at the edge of the system, about 2 billion kilometers out." Engineer Pete Collins looked up from his console. "That's impossible. Nothing that size should be able to move that fast. The energy signatures are off the charts." Morrison felt his stomach tighten. In all his years of space service, he had never seen readings like these. "How big are we talking?" "Each contact is roughly 10 kilometers long, sir," Lisa replied, her fingers dancing over the controls. "And there are hundreds of them." The bridge fell silent except for the quiet hum of the ship's systems. Morrison had heard rumors and theories about alien life, but Earth's exploration ships had never found anything more complex than bacteria on distant worlds. Now it seemed something had found them. "Pete, get me a secure channel to Earth Command immediately," Morrison ordered. "Lisa, try to get a better picture of what we're dealing with." As Pete worked to establish contact with Earth, Lisa enhanced the sensor data. The image that appeared on the main screen made everyone on the bridge take a step back. Massive ships, each one larger than any human structure ever built, moved in perfect formation toward the inner solar system. Their design was completely alien, with sweeping curves and strange protrusions that served no purpose Morrison could understand. "Sir, I'm getting some kind of transmission from the alien fleet," Lisa reported. "It's not directed at us, though. They seem to be talking among themselves." Morrison nodded grimly. "Can you understand any of it?" "Not the language, but I'm recording everything. The computer might be able to find patterns." Far ahead of them, aboard the flagship of the Zephyrian Imperial Fleet, Admiral Korth Val studied the tactical display with satisfaction. 200 of the Empire's finest warships had just completed their jump into this primitive solar system. According to their scouts, the third planet harbored a young civilization that had barely begun to explore their own system. "Admiral, we're detecting a small vessel in the outer system," reported his tactical officer. "Primitive design, probably a survey ship." Korth Val barely glanced at the reading. "Ignore it. One of their exploration vessels, no doubt. Focus on the main target." The Zephyrian Empire had conquered over 300 worlds in the past 3 centuries. The pattern was always the same. They would arrive in overwhelming force, demonstrate their power, and demand surrender. Most species gave up without a fight once they saw the size of the fleet. Those foolish enough to resist were quickly crushed. This system would be no different. The inhabitants of the third planet used crude chemical rockets and had only recently established small bases on their satellite. Their most advanced weapons were simple nuclear devices. Against the might of the Zephyrian fleet, they would last perhaps a few hours. "Begin standard scanning procedures," Korth Val ordered. "I want a complete analysis of their defensive capabilities." Back on the USS Liberty, Morrison watched the alien fleet with growing concern. The ships were moving slowly but steadily toward Earth. At their current speed, they would reach the inner system in less than a week. "Sir, I've established contact with Earth Command," Pete reported. "Admiral Carl Davis is standing by." Morrison straightened his uniform and activated the communication system. The face of Admiral Davis appeared on the screen, his expression grave. "Captain Morrison, report," Davis said without preamble. "Sir, we have confirmation of alien contact. A fleet of approximately 200 vessels, each measuring 10 kilometers in length. They're currently moving toward the inner system." Davis was quiet for a moment. "Are they responding to any communication attempts?" "Negative, sir." "They appear to be ignoring us completely." "Understood. Captain, I need you to maintain your position and continue monitoring the alien fleet. Do not engage under any circumstances. We're implementing Defense Protocol 7. Morrison felt a chill run down his spine. Defense Protocol 7 was something he had heard whispered about in military circles, but never thought he would see implemented. It meant Earth's most secret project was about to be revealed. "Sir, what should we tell them if they try to contact us?" Morrison asked. Davis's expression hardened. Keep them talking as long as possible. We need time. The communication ended, leaving Morrison and his crew alone with the approaching alien fleet. Lisa continued to monitor the alien transmissions while Pete analyzed their ship designs. The more they learned, the more worried they became. "Captain, their ships are definitely military," Pete reported. "I'm seeing what look like weapons ports along their hulls." "Big ones," Morrison nodded. "Lisa, any luck with their communications?" "I'm starting to pick up some patterns, sir. The computer thinks they're using a form of mathematical language base. But Captain—" She paused, looking worried. "What is it?" "Some of the words keep repeating. The computer thinks they might mean conquest and surrender and primitive." Morrison felt his heart sink. These weren't explorers or diplomats. They were invaders, and they saw humanity as just another easy target. Aboard the Zephyrian flagship, the scanning results were being analyzed. Admiral Korth Val expected to see the typical signs of a young civilization: basic fusion reactors, simple weapons, and primitive sensor technology. What he saw instead made him call for his chief scientist. "These readings can't be correct," Korth Val said, pointing at the display. "Run the scan again." The scientist, a thin creature with multiple arms, worked quickly at his console. "Sir, the readings are confirmed." "That small vessel in the outer system? Its power source is not fusion. Then what is it?" "The energy signature suggests a controlled singularity, Admiral. But that's impossible. No primitive species should have such technology." Korth Val stared at the display in disbelief. A controlled singularity drive was theoretical even for the Zephyrian Empire. It would require mastery of physics that took most civilizations thousands of years to achieve. "There must be an error," he said finally. "Continue with the invasion plan. One primitive vessel with unusual readings changes nothing." But deep in his mind, a small seed of doubt began to grow. The emergency session at Earth Defense Command had been going on for 6 hours. Admiral Carl Davis stood before a massive display showing the alien fleet's steady approach toward the inner solar system. Around the table sat the most important military and scientific leaders on Earth, their faces grim as they absorbed the reality of humanity's situation. "The alien fleet will reach Mars orbit in 4 days, reported General Kate Wilson, head of strategic planning. "Our deep space sensors confirm Captain Morrison's initial report. 200 vessels, each one massive enough to carry invasion forces for an entire planet." Dr. Helen Carter, Earth's leading expert on theoretical alien contact, spoke up from her position at the far end of the table. "We've been analyzing the communication intercepts from the USS Liberty. The translation programs are still working, but early results suggest these beings have conquered hundreds of other worlds. They follow a pattern of overwhelming force followed by demands for surrender." Davis nodded grimly. "Which brings us to our response options." He turned to face the assembled group. "Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to discuss the Retribution Project." A heavy silence fell over the room. Everyone present knew about the project in theory, but few had seen the actual specifications. For the past 10 years, Earth's best engineers and scientists had been working in secret facilities throughout the asteroid belt, building something that most people would have considered impossible. "Sir, are we really ready to deploy her?" asked Captain Ryan Walsh, who had been quietly listening from the back of the room. Walsh was young for a starship captain, only 35. But he had been chosen specifically for this moment after years of testing and psychological evaluation. Davis activated another display, showing a sleek, dark vessel that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The ship was 2 kilometers long, shaped like a blade with smooth curves that suggested both beauty and deadly purpose. "The TDF Retribution is humanity's first true warship," Davis explained. "She's been under construction for a decade, built using technologies we've developed in secret. Captain Walsh, you and your crew have trained for this scenario for 3 years. The question is whether we're ready to reveal what humanity is truly capable of." Dr. Carter leaned forward in her chair. "Admiral, if we deploy the Retribution, there's no going back. Once these aliens see what we've built, the entire galaxy will know that Earth is not what they expected." "The alternative is surrender or extinction," Davis replied. "I don't find either option acceptable." Meanwhile, in the asteroid belt, the massive construction facility known as Shipyard Alpha buzzed with activity. For years, this place had been humanity's greatest secret, hidden behind the bulk of the asteroid series and shielded by technology that made it invisible to conventional sensors. Commander Lisa Zhang supervised the final preparations aboard the Retribution. The ship's corridors hummed with energy from the controlled singularity drive at its heart. The walls were lined with displays showing systems that would have seemed like magic to someone from just 50 years earlier. All departments report ready. Captain, she told Walsh as he arrived on the bridge. The bridge itself was a marvel of human engineering, with holographic displays floating in midair and control systems that responded to thought as much as touch. Walsh took his position in the captain's chair, feeling the weight of humanity's future on his shoulders. How long until we can depart? The singularity drive is fully charged, reported Chief Engineer Ben Parker from his station. We can be underway in 30 minutes. Weapon systems? Walsh asked. All quantum torpedo tubes loaded and ready, replied Tactical Officer Amy Rodriguez. The main gun is charged and standing by, Walsh nodded. The main gun was humanity's greatest achievement and most terrible weapon. It fired compressed quantum vacuum, a beam that didn't destroy matter so much as convince the universe that the matter had never existed in the first place. In testing, it had erased a small asteroid so completely that not even atoms remained. Back aboard the Zephyrian flagship, Admiral Korth Val was reviewing the latest intelligence reports about the third planet. The results continued to puzzle him. The planet's inhabitants had somehow achieved controlled fusion power, but their space vessels still used primitive chemical rockets. Their communications were sophisticated, but their weapons appeared to be simple nuclear devices. It's as if they developed in an unusual pattern, his science officer reported. Most species advance uniformly across all technologies. These humans seem to have made great leaps in some areas while remaining primitive in others. Humans, Korth Val repeated, testing the alien word. That's what they call themselves. Yes, Admiral. We've intercepted enough of their communications to understand their basic language structure. They appear to be a young species, having only achieved spaceflight within the last century. Korth Val felt his confidence returning. A century of spaceflight was nothing. The Zephyrian Empire had been traveling between stars for over 3,000 years. Whatever anomalous readings they had detected from that small patrol vessel, it couldn't represent the true technological level of the species as a whole. Continue the advance, he ordered. Deploy screening forces ahead of the main fleet. I want to know about any defensive installations before we reach the inner system. The screening forces, 20 fast attack vessels, accelerated ahead of the main fleet. They would reach the orbit of Mars in 2 days, well ahead of the primary invasion force. Their mission was to locate and destroy any hidden weapons or defensive stations that might pose a threat. To the larger ships, what they didn't know was that their approach was being monitored by sensor networks that humanity had spent decades placing throughout the solar system. Every movement of the alien fleet was being tracked and analyzed by computers that could process information faster than biological minds could comprehend. Dr. Carter stood in the monitoring station deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, watching the alien fleet's movements on a massive three-dimensional display. The facility around her hummed with the activity of hundreds of technicians and analysts, all working to understand their enemy. The screening force is moving faster than the main fleet, she reported to Admiral Davis via secure communication. They'll be in range of our outer sensors in 36 hours. Understood, Davis replied. The Retribution is departing the construction facility now. Captain Walsh has his orders. Carter watched as a new contact appeared on the display, moving at impossible speed from the asteroid belt toward the approaching alien scouts. The Retribution's drive technology allowed it to accelerate at rates that would turn a normal human crew into paste, but the ship's internal systems created a bubble of stable space-time that protected everyone aboard. Aboard the Retribution, Walsh watched the tactical display as his ship closed the distance to the alien screening force. His vessel was vastly outnumbered, but he wasn't worried. The aliens had no idea what they were about to encounter. Sir, we're detecting the alien scouts, reported Amy Rodriguez. 20 vessels moving in standard patrol formation. Any signs they've detected us? Walsh asked. Negative, sir. Our stealth systems are functioning perfectly. Walsh smiled grimly. The Retribution's hull was made from crystallized space-time itself, a material that bent light and sensor beams around the ship like water flowing around a stone. To the alien sensors, his ship was effectively invisible. Take us to intercept course, he ordered, but maintain stealth protocols. I want to get a close look at these ships before we announce our presence. As the Retribution moved toward its first encounter with alien technology, Admiral Korthval received a disturbing report from his deep space sensors. They had detected an energy signature moving from the asteroid belt toward his screening force, but the readings made no sense. The object appears to be roughly 2 kilometers in length, his sensor officer reported, but its mass reading suggests something much smaller. And the energy output? Admiral, it's impossible. Explain impossible, Korthval demanded. The power signature suggests the object is using a controlled singularity drive, but that would require technology we ourselves don't possess. And sir? The officer paused, checking his readings again. The object appears to be invisible to our standard sensors. We're only detecting it because of the gravitational distortions from its drive system. For the first time since arriving in the human solar system, Admiral Korthval felt a chill of genuine fear. The TDF Retribution dropped out of hyperspace directly between the Zephyrian screening force and the planet Mars. The human warship's arrival was so sudden and unexpected that several alien vessels actually collided with each other as they attempted emergency maneuvers. Captain Ryan Walsh stood on his bridge, watching the chaos unfold on the tactical display. 20 alien ships, each one 3 times the size of his vessel, scrambled to form a defensive formation. Their hulls gleamed silver in the distant sunlight, covered in weapon ports and sensor arrays that spoke of centuries of military engineering. Sir, the alien vessels are attempting to scan us, reported Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez from the tactical station. Their sensors are having difficulty penetrating our hull. Walsh nodded. The Retribution's crystallized space-time armor didn't just deflect energy weapons. It also made detailed scanning nearly impossible. To the aliens, his ship would appear as little more than a dark shadow against the stars. Open a communication channel, Walsh ordered. All frequencies. Communications officer Lisa Zhang worked quickly at her console. Channel open, sir. We're broadcasting on every frequency the aliens have used in their transmissions. Walsh took a deep breath. He was about to make first contact with an alien civilization, and the words he chose could determine the future of both species. This is Captain Ryan Walsh of the Terran Defense Force vessel Retribution. You have entered the Sol system without permission and are approaching human territory with obvious hostile intent. State your purpose. The response came quickly, translated in real time by the ship's advanced computers. The voice that emerged from the speakers was deep and mechanical, filled with the arrogance of a species that had conquered hundreds of worlds. Human vessel, this is Battle Commander Thek Val of the Zephyrian Imperial Fleet. You will stand down immediately and prepare to be boarded. Your species has been selected for integration into the Zephyrian Empire. Resistance is futile. Walsh almost smiled at the alien's confidence. Commander Thek Val, I'm afraid you've made a serious mistake. Humans don't surrender, and we certainly don't integrate well with others. I suggest you turn your fleet around and leave our system immediately. There was a long pause before the alien responded, and when he did, his voice carried a note of amusement. Human captain, you pilot a single small vessel against 20 of our finest warships. Your species has achieved basic spaceflight for barely a century. Do not mistake our willingness to accept your surrender for weakness. Small vessel? Walsh repeated, looking around his bridge with mock surprise. I suppose that depends on your perspective. He nodded to Amy Rodriguez, who activated the ship's external lighting system. Suddenly, the Retribution was fully visible to the alien sensors. The sleek, dark hull stretched 2 kilometers from bow to stern, bristling with weapon ports and sensor arrays that made the alien ships look primitive by comparison. But it wasn't just the ship's size that caused panic among the alien crews. Their sensors were finally getting clear readings of the human vessel's construction, and the results sent shockwaves through their command structure. Aboard the alien, flagship Battle Commander Thek Val stared at his tactical display in disbelief. Run those scans again, he ordered his sensor officer. Sir, the readings are confirmed. The human vessel's hull appears to be constructed from crystallized spacetime. That should be impossible. Thek Val felt his confidence evaporating. Crystallized. Spacetime was a theoretical material that their best scientists claimed could never be produced in useful quantities. The energy requirements alone should have been beyond any single civilization. What about their weapons? He asked. The sensor officer worked frantically at his console. "Sir, I'm detecting multiple quantum torpedo tubes and what appears to be a main gun of unknown design. The energy readings from that weapon are..." He paused, rechecking his instruments. "Sir, the weapon appears to be capable of planet-level destruction." Back on the Retribution, Walsh watched the alien formation with amusement. Several of the smaller vessels were actually backing away from his ship, their crews apparently having second thoughts about engagement. "Captain, we're receiving multiple communications from the alien vessels," Lisa reported. "Most of them are requesting instructions from their command structure." "And their command structure?" "Hasn't responded yet, sir. I think we've surprised them." Walsh activated the communication system again. "Commander Thekval, you seem to have gone quiet. Are you reconsidering your invasion plans?" This time the response came from a different voice, older and more authoritative. "Human Captain, this is Admiral Korth Val of the Zephyrian Imperial Fleet. I am ordering you to withdraw immediately while we reassess the situation." "Admiral," Walsh replied, "I appreciate your more reasonable tone. However, you're the ones who need to withdraw. This is human space, and your presence here is an act of war." "Human space?" Korth Val's voice carried a note of disbelief. "Your species has barely left its home planet. You have no claim to interstellar space." Walsh's expression hardened. "Admiral, I think you've fundamentally misunderstood what humanity represents. We may be new to interstellar travel, but we're not new to warfare, and we're certainly not new to protecting what's ours." He nodded to his tactical officer. "Amy, target the lead vessel with a low-power scan from the main gun. Don't fire. Just let them know we're aiming at them." The quantum vacuum weapon swiveled toward the alien flagship, its targeting systems locking onto the massive vessel. Immediately, alarms began sounding throughout the Zephyrian fleet as their sensors detected the energy buildup. "Human Captain, what are you doing?" Korth Val demanded. "I'm showing you exactly what you're dealing with," Walsh replied calmly. "That weapon is designed to erase matter at the quantum level. Your shields, your armor, even the atoms that make up your ship would simply cease to exist. And before you think about running, let me mention that we've disabled your hyperspace drives." Panic spread through the alien fleet as engineering crews confirmed that their faster-than-light systems were indeed offline. The human ship had somehow projected a field that prevented hyperspace jumps without their crews even noticing. "How?" Korth Val asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Trade secret," Walsh replied. "But I will tell you this much, Admiral. Humanity has spent the last 1,000 years perfecting the art of warfare. We've fought wars with spears, with gunpowder, with nuclear weapons, and now with technologies that reshape reality itself. Every conflict has taught us something new about survival." Dr. Helen Carter, monitoring the exchange from Earth, felt a mixture of pride and terror as she watched the alien fleet's formation begin to disintegrate. Several of the smaller vessels were attempting to flee, only to discover that something was preventing their escape. "The psychological warfare is working," she reported to Admiral Davis. "Their fleet discipline is breaking down." Davis nodded grimly. "Captain Walsh knows what he's doing. But we need to be prepared for the possibility that they'll call for reinforcements." Back in space, Admiral Korth Val was facing the worst crisis of his military career. His screening force was trapped by a single human vessel that possessed technology his Empire's scientists claimed was impossible. Worse, the implications were staggering. If this was what humanity had developed in just a century of spaceflight, what would they be capable of in another 100 years? "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving a message from the main fleet. They want to know why we've stopped advancing." Korth Val closed his eyes. How could he explain that his entire screening force had been neutralized by a single human ship? How could he tell his superiors that everything they knew about primitive civilizations was wrong? "Captain Walsh," he said finally, "I believe we need to discuss terms." Walsh smiled. "I'm listening, Admiral, but understand that any terms will involve your immediate withdrawal from human space and a guarantee that your empire will never again threaten Earth or any human colony." "And if we refuse?" Walsh's smile faded. Admiral, you came here to conquer us. You've seen what one of our ships can do against 20 of yours. Now imagine what our entire fleet is capable of. The truth was, the Retribution was humanity's only true warship, but Korth Val didn't need to know that. The alien admiral was already terrified by what he'd witnessed. Adding the possibility of an entire human battle fleet to his calculations would likely end any thoughts of invasion. I need time to consult with my superiors, Korth Val said finally. You have 1 hour, Walsh replied. After that, I start demonstrating what our weapons can do to something other than empty space. The hour passed slowly aboard both fleets. Captain Walsh used the time to study the alien vessels in detail, while Admiral Korth Val faced the most difficult decision of his military career. The Zephyrian Empire had built its reputation on overwhelming force and quick victories. Retreating from a single enemy ship would be seen as cowardice by the War Council. Finally, Korth Val made his choice. The honor of the Empire demanded a response to the human threat, even if that response was doomed to fail. Human Captain. His voice crackled over the communication system. The Zephyrian Empire does not negotiate with primitive species. You have one chance to surrender before we demonstrate why our empire has conquered 300 worlds. Walsh sighed. He had hoped the aliens would be reasonable, but pride and arrogance were apparently universal traits among aggressive species. Admiral, you're making a mistake. But if you insist on learning the hard way, so be it. Korth Val turned to his tactical officer.
Signal the fleet.
All vessels are to target the human ship with maximum firepower. Concentrated barrage on my mark. The alien formation shifted as 20 warships brought their weapons to bear on the Retribution. Each vessel carried plasma cannons capable of melting through the armor of any known ship design. Together they could reduce a small moon to vapor in minutes. Sir, they're powering up their weapons, reported Amy Rodriguez from her tactical station. I'm reading massive energy buildup across their entire fleet. Raise shields, Walsh ordered calmly. All hands prepare for incoming fire. Throughout the Retribution, crew members secured themselves as the ship's defensive systems came online. The crystallized space-time hull began to shimmer as exotic energy fields reinforced its already incredible strength. Fire, Korth Val commanded. 20 Zephyrian warships unleashed their fury simultaneously. Streams of superheated plasma, each one hot enough to vaporize steel instantly, converged on the human vessel. The combined firepower was enough to destroy anything the aliens had ever encountered. The plasma streams struck the Retribution's shields and simply disappeared. The exotic energy fields that protected the human ship didn't deflect the attack or absorb it. They converted the incoming energy into harmless radiation that scattered uselessly into space. Aboard the alien flagship, silence filled the bridge as sensor readings confirmed the impossible. The human ship showed no damage whatsoever. Its hull temperature hadn't even increased, sir, the tactical officer whispered. Our weapons had no effect. Korth Val stared at the display in horror. The combined firepower of 20 warships hadn't even scratched the human vessel. What kind of technology were they facing? Captain Walsh activated the communication system, his voice carrying a note of disappointment. Admiral, that was remarkably foolish. Now I have to respond, and I really hope to avoid any demonstrations of destruction. He turned to his tactical officer. Amy, select a target for the main gun. Something impressive but uninhabited. Amy Rodriguez studied her displays carefully. Sir, there's a large asteroid about 50,000 kilometers off our port bow. Roughly the size of Manhattan, composed primarily of iron and nickel. Perfect, Walsh replied. Target locked? Locked and ready, sir. Fire. The Retribution's main weapon discharged with no visible beam or projectile. There was no flash of light, no dramatic explosion. One moment the asteroid was there on every sensor display. The next moment it simply wasn't. The alien crews watched in stunned silence as their sensors confirmed what their eyes couldn't believe. The asteroid hadn't been destroyed or vaporized. It had been erased from existence at the quantum level, as if the universe had simply forgotten it had ever been there. Dr. Helen Carter, monitoring the exchange from Earth's command center, watched the alien fleet's reaction with grim satisfaction. The psychological impact is exactly what we hoped for, she reported to Admiral Davis. Several alien vessels are trying to break formation. Davis nodded. How are their communications? Increasingly frantic. They're requesting immediate instructions from their main fleet, But those ships are still days away from reaching this position. Aboard the Zephyrian flagship, Admiral Korthval was experiencing something he had never felt before in his long military career: absolute terror. The weapon that had just erased that asteroid could eliminate his entire fleet without effort. Worse, he was beginning to understand that humanity was playing with him. If they had wanted to destroy his ships, they could have done so at any time. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "3 of our vessels are requesting permission to withdraw." "Denied," Korthval said automatically, though his voice lacked conviction. "The Empire does not retreat." Captain Walsh's voice filled the bridge again. "Admiral, I hope that demonstration clarified your situation. You came here to conquer a primitive species, but you've encountered something quite different. Humanity has been preparing for this day for a very long time. What do you want?" Korthval asked, his pride finally giving way to pragmatism. "Simple: your immediate withdrawal from human space, and a message to your empire that Earth is not available for conquest. In return, we won't turn your fleet into a debris field." Korthval considered his options. He could order his remaining ships to scatter, hoping some would escape to warn the main fleet. He could attempt to ram the human vessel, though he doubted that would accomplish anything except getting his crews killed. Or he could accept the human terms and face the consequences back home. "Human captain, even if I agree to your terms, the main Zephyrian fleet is still approaching. They have 180 warships, including our most powerful dreadnoughts. They will not be as easily impressed as my screening force." Walsh smiled, though the alien couldn't see it. "Admiral, let me worry about your main fleet. Right now I'm concerned with you and your 20 ships. 19 ships, corrected Amy Rodriguez quietly. "One of their vessels just jumped to hyperspace." Walsh shrugged. "Let it go. One ship spreading word about human capabilities isn't a bad thing." Indeed, the escaping Zephyrian vessel was already transmitting everything it had witnessed back to the main fleet. The message would reach Admiral Korthval's superiors within hours, giving them time to reconsider their invasion plans. But Walsh wasn't counting on alien reasonableness. Humanity had prepared for this moment too long to leave anything to chance. "Admiral Korthval," he said formally, "I'm giving you and your remaining vessels safe passage out of the solar system. In return, I want your word that you'll carry a message to your empire." "What message?" "That humanity is not what you expected. We're not a primitive species stumbling around with chemical rockets. We're a civilization that has mastered technologies your scientists probably consider theoretical, and most importantly, we're not interested in being conquered." Korthval was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a note of genuine curiosity. "Human captain, how did your species advance so quickly? According to our intelligence, you achieved spaceflight less than 2 centuries ago." Walsh considered his answer carefully. "Admiral, my species has a saying: necessity is the mother of invention. We've spent most of our history fighting wars with each other. Every conflict taught us something new about survival, about technology, about pushing beyond what we thought was possible. When we finally reached the stars, we brought all those lessons with us. It wasn't the complete truth, but it was close enough. Humanity's rapid technological advancement had indeed been driven by military necessity, but much of their most advanced technology had been developed specifically for this moment. The encounter with an alien invasion force had been planned for and prepared for over decades. "Sir," Amy Rodriguez reported, "I'm detecting movement from the main alien fleet. They're accelerating toward our position." Walsh nodded. "It seems Admiral Korthval's superiors have received word of our encounter." Korthval's voice carried a note of resignation. "Captain Walsh, you have impressed me more than I care to admit. But the main fleet includes ships that make my vessels look like toys. If you're wise, you'll use the time I can give you to evacuate your planet." "Evacuate?" Walsh laughed. "Admiral, I think you still don't understand what you're dealing with. We're not going anywhere. In fact, I think it's time to show your empire what a real human fleet looks like." The main Zephyrian fleet emerged from hyperspace like an avalanche of metal and energy. 180 warships, including massive dreadnoughts that dwarfed even their largest escorts, formed up in perfect battle formation. At the center of the fleet, Admiral Korthval's flagship, a vessel so large it could house a small city, pulsed with the power of weapons capable of shattering continents. Captain Walsh watched the display with interest rather than fear. "Impressive," he admitted to his bridge crew. "They certainly believe in overwhelming force." Sir, the lead dreadnought is 15 kilometers long, reported Amy Rodriguez. I'm reading weapon systems that could sterilize entire planets. And they probably could, Walsh agreed. Against most civilizations. Amy, signal Earth Command. It's time for Phase 2. Deep in the asteroid belt, construction facilities that had been hidden for decades suddenly came online. Massive doors that had been camouflaged as asteroid surfaces began to open, revealing the truth that Admiral Korth Val and his empire were about to learn. Humanity had not built just one warship. The TDF Retribution had been the prototype, the proof of concept that crystallized space-time hulls and quantum vacuum weapons could actually work. But while the aliens had been advancing toward Earth, human shipyards had been busy. 12 more vessels, each one larger and more advanced than the Retribution, began emerging from their hidden construction bays. The TDF Vengeance, the TDF Defiance, the TDF Indomitable. Each ship represented years of human engineering and determination. Together they formed the core of Earth's defense fleet. But the aliens were about to learn that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology. It was their ability to adapt and innovate faster than their enemies could react. Admiral Korth Val, came the transmission from the Zephyrian fleet commander. Report on the situation. The younger Korth Val's voice carried a mixture of fear and awe. Sir, the humans possess technology beyond our understanding. A single ship disabled my entire screening force without taking damage. One ship? The fleet commander's voice dripped with disbelief. You were defeated by a single primitive vessel. Sir, with respect, these humans are not primitive. Their ship carries weapons that can erase matter from existence. Their defenses make our most powerful guns useless. And Admiral, he paused, checking his sensors, they have more ships. Indeed, as the human fleet emerged from the asteroid belt, even the massive Zephyrian dreadnoughts seemed small by comparison. The largest human vessel, the TDF Sovereign, stretched 4 kilometers from bow to stern and carried enough firepower to sterilize entire star systems. Captain Walsh opened a communication channel to the entire alien fleet. This is Captain Ryan Walsh of the Terran Defense Force. You are trespassing in human space with hostile intent. You have 30 minutes to begin withdrawal procedures before we interpret your presence as an act of war. The fleet commander, Admiral Vorth Keck, was a veteran of over 50 successful conquest campaigns. He had never encountered a species that spoke to the mighty Zephyrian Empire with such casual confidence. Human captain, he replied, you are outnumbered more than 10 to 1. Your species may possess advanced technology, but numbers have their own quality. Withdraw your vessels and prepare your planet for integration into our empire. Walsh almost laughed. Admiral, you're making the same mistake everyone else has made when facing humanity. You're assuming this is about numbers? He nodded to his communications officer. Lisa, patch me through to the entire fleet. Suddenly, Walsh's voice was being broadcast to every human ship in the system. All vessels, this is Retribution Actual. The aliens have declined our generous offer to leave peacefully. You are authorized to demonstrate why that was a poor decision. Pick your targets, but remember, we want some of them left alive to carry word back to their empire. What happened next would be analyzed by military historians for centuries. 13 human warships, outnumbered more than 10 to 1 by an enemy with superior numbers and centuries of military experience, proceeded to dismantle the Zephyrian fleet with surgical precision. The human ships moved like dancers, their crystallized space-time hulls shimmering as they accelerated at impossible rates. Alien plasma cannons fired continuously, filling space with deadly energy, but none of it touched the human vessels. Their shields didn't just deflect the attacks, they redirected them, sending the aliens' own weapons back at them. The TDF Vengeance targeted 3 alien dreadnoughts simultaneously, its quantum torpedo tubes launching projectiles that passed through the enemy shields as if they didn't exist. The explosions that followed weren't conventional detonations. They were tears in space-time itself, creating miniature black holes that consumed the alien ships from within. The TDF Defiance engaged a formation of 30 escort vessels, its main gun firing repeatedly. Each shot erased another enemy ship from existence, leaving only empty space where mighty warships had been moments before. But it was the TDF Sovereign that provided the most spectacular display. The massive vessel positioned itself at the center of the alien formation and activated a weapon that the aliens had never imagined possible. A field of twisted spacetime expanded outward from the ship, and every alien vessel caught within it simply stopped moving. Their engines continued to fire, their weapons continued to discharge, but they were frozen in space like insects in amber. Admiral Vorthkek watched in horror as his mighty fleet was systematically dismantled by an enemy that treated physics like a suggestion rather than a law. Half his ships had been destroyed or disabled in less than 10 minutes, and the human vessels showed no signs of damage. All ships, he broadcast on the fleet frequency, emergency withdrawal, scatter and jump to hyperspace immediately. But as the surviving Zephyrian vessels attempted to flee, they discovered what Admiral Korthval's screening force had learned earlier. Their hyperspace drives were offline, disabled by some technology they couldn't understand or counter. Captain Walsh's voice filled the void once again. Admiral Vorthkek, I believe we've made our point. Your invasion fleet has been neutralized. Your ships that are still capable of movement may leave our system immediately. Those that are disabled will be provided with minimal repairs to ensure you can reach the nearest Zephyrian outpost. The alien admiral stared at his tactical display in stunned silence. In 30 minutes of combat, the humans had demonstrated technological superiority so complete that resistance was meaningless. They could have destroyed every ship in his fleet, but instead they were offering mercy. Why? He asked finally. Why are you letting us go? Walsh's answer would be recorded in both human and Zephyrian historical archives. Admiral, humanity doesn't seek conquest. We seek survival. You came here to destroy us, and we've proven that we can't be destroyed. Now we're giving you the chance to carry that message back to your empire and anyone else who might be watching. Indeed, the battle had been broadcast across subspace frequencies that would carry the news to every major civilization within 100 light-years. The galaxy was about to learn that a new power had emerged from the outer rim, one that possessed technologies that redefined what was possible. Dr. Helen Carter, monitoring the aftermath from Earth's command center, felt a mixture of pride and apprehension as she watched the alien fleet begin its retreat. Admiral Davis, we've achieved our objective. The invasion has been repelled and word will spread about human capabilities. Davis nodded grimly. Yes, but now we face a different challenge. We're no longer a hidden species on the galactic rim. Every civilization out there will be trying to decide whether we're a threat to be eliminated or an ally to be courted. Captain Walsh, aboard the Retribution, was thinking along similar lines. As he watched the last of the alien vessels disappear into hyperspace, he realized that humanity had just stepped onto a much larger stage. Earth was no longer an isolated world struggling to understand its place in the universe. They were now a galactic power, with all the responsibilities and dangers that entailed. Sir, reported Amy Rodriguez, we're receiving communications from several sources. It looks like the battle was monitored by at least 6 different alien civilizations. What kind of communications? Walsh asked. Requests for diplomatic contact, sir. It seems everyone wants to meet the species that just redefined military technology. Walsh smiled as he looked out at the stars. Humanity had spent centuries wondering if they were alone in the universe. Now they knew they weren't alone, and more importantly, they had proven they could defend themselves against anything the galaxy could throw at them. The age of human isolation was over. The age of human expansion was about to begin, and across the galaxy, in the halls of power of dozens of alien civilizations, the same question was being asked: who were these humans, and what did their emergence mean for the balance of power among the stars? The answer, they would soon learn, was that everything had changed.